So, what makes you an expert at something in your job or in your day to day life? We're going to go into that one today because no one explains really what it means to be an expert at a subject or how to get there. So, let's dig into that one. I'm John, glad you're back. So, the reason I'm going into this subject is I just got sent out for the last couple of days to a remote facility that my company operates to train two people into their roles. And I've never been to this facility before. I've done similar jobs elsewhere, but this facility is different than where I had done it. And they sent me out because I was the subject matter expert. SME is common business terminology for these sorts of roles when I was at a previous job in the company. So I get out here and I'm looking around and I'm trying to figure out what technical skills vary here, right? Because really, what you need to know if you're an expert is the general situation you're in, like the day to day job, all the processes that happen, whatever it is. And then you need to know the second thing is how do you troubleshoot and deal with the unique things that happen once a month, once a quarter, once a year, whatever it might be. And some of those take time, some of those you can get specialty training in. And the third thing you got to know is what's the right way to do things, right? And the right way entails kind of two or three different things. One, you're doing something that isn't pushing stuff like under a rug or into a corner to be dealt with later. You're doing things in a manner that isn't making other departments, other people you work with, have to carry or offset some sort of burden because something's getting missed or wrong or whatever it might be. And the third thing that you got to kind of understand is an expert of a subject matter can be asked to extrapolate what's happening here and explain how it fits in the bigger picture. Okay, so there's lots of people out there who are in a role for a long time. They're like the expert in a company or the subject matter expert in a company for something because they've been there forever. But if you ask them like, hey, can you go to this meeting where we're planning on building a new process within your department and give feedback? They're gonna go to that meeting and they might just sit there and go, ooh, I don't know about this. Like that's not how we do things, right? Well, if your answer to something is, well, that's not how we do it, therefore we can't, then you're probably not an expert at something. You're just, I guess, a person with good seniority. Okay. So, how do you get to be an expert in the subject, though? Right? That's kind of what an expert is, characteristics of them, but how do you get there? So, there's always some basis of training, right? Whether you're getting face to face training with somebody else that knows the job, whether you're getting training from someone above that role or next to that role that knows how it should go, even though they can't tell you specifically what things you're missing, you need to get better at day to day. And or you'll have like manuals, so videos, SOPs, written documentation on how things work, whatever it might be. You need some basis of training. Why? Because if you don't get the right basics down, then you're not going to be able to get the like minutia and the technical problems and things like that to sort out down the road. If you kind of just teach yourself everything, you're going to have little holes here and there. So imagine someone who speaks a different language, they learn, something new entirely, right? Um, I'm speaking English, right? Someone comes in from India, they're probably going to have an accent. Why? Because there's little things, the enunciation of words, letters, whatever it might be, that they don't naturally have. It'll take them a long time to get past that hurdle if they ever do on having perfect English speaking, right? It's the same thing with somebody who teaches themselves a process on their own, right? They're going to learn it. They might even get to be perfect at it down the road. But there's going to be little things that they're missing or they have wrong, and those things will stick out. Everyone else will see them, and off and on they'll say, "Hey, that's wrong," because even though the gist of what you're doing is right, there's the little things that stick out that suggest to others there's something missing, and that's what happens when you don't get proper training. Okay, so you have the training basic. Second thing is someone has to be giving you corrective feedback to say, here's right and wrong. So training typically doesn't tell you the right thing is that all three of these things line up perfectly and this thing never happens, once a quarter, once a month, whatever. This rare instance doesn't happen if everything's perfect. Your training is going to tell you you do these steps to get to this outcome and then move on to the next thing. It's not going to tell you like, hey, here's the long-term risks, here's the one thing that might happen here and there. You need that corrective feedback, or you need to be in a position where those little minutiae hit you hard enough where you learn over time, hey, that's a problem and here's how I preempt that. Okay. And the third thing you're going to have to be able to do to become like a really expert in something is look at the situation you're in and say, is this the best way to do this over time. So if you're looking at a process you have, and you're like, I typed this thing in 4 times to get from point A down to point, H in this process. And you think to yourself, why do I have to type it 4 times? I could type it once and it could just automatically pull through these things in some manner. Like that's the way you think if you're truly becoming an expert on a subject matter. And one of the problems that people have is that they have no corrective feedback or they have no one that understands the situation. And then they have turnover in roles, right? So I think the average turnover is probably closer to 3.5 years or 3 years, but 4 is the number that HR uses as like, hey, that's risk factor. This person's going to leave if they've been in a role for 4 years. That's one of the baselines HR used to teach. I don't know if that's still a thing, but so let's say you have a role where it turns over in 2.5 to 3 years on average. Okay, cool. Well, that's going to be a problem because let's say you have 2 or 3 activities that happen once a year in that job. That person has done this 2 or 3 activity kind of subset of that role once or twice, and then they're gone. They never master that activity. They don't understand how it impacts everything else potentially because it's so rare. They've just dealt with it when it came to them. So that's one of the hurdles you have to deal with is timing, capability, the training and the support. And most people never get to that level. Okay. I was lucky. I became kind of an expert in a few things because my boss was one of the people that set up all the processes. And he would swoop in off and on and say, hey, this is coming, watch out for this thing. Or I'd call him and I'd say, hey, this didn't work out well. Why? He could explain it to me. And then I learned all these little technical odds and ends and eventually got to the point where I learned the new stuff that had come up since he set up the original processes. And then I integrated all that together. And now I'm better than him at some of it, right? That's how it should work. And that's how an expert becomes an expert at a subject matter. Now, if you're going into a job and you want to become an expert at something, number one, you got to ask questions. Okay. When something comes up and people go, hey, why is that happening? The answer can't be, well, we've always done it that way. If someone asks why something's happening, they're not the only one that's asking or thinking about why it's happening. So if you have an answer next time, that's good. Always follow up on questions like that. Two, when you do come into a role, you got to ask them, hey, what's the right way this is done? Or what's the ideal outcome for you, manager of a different department or your manager? Say, hey, what's the ideal outcome here? Not just, did I get this right? Like, what's the goal long term for this activity downstream or upstream of me? And you'll get that feedback and then you'll learn like what the actual purpose of what you're doing is as opposed to just the process to get it done. Once you get those two things kind of in order, then it's just kind of the grind of, okay, well, here's the day-to-day job. And maybe you don't like the day-to-day job because it takes too long. If you can go look at the job you're doing, functionally fix and change it and make it better, and then everyone else around you comes to you for feedback on that job, you're close to that level of being the expert or you're there. Now, some people will say, well, I'm the expert because I've been there for 9 months and everyone else is new, therefore I'm the expert. It's like, no, you're just the most senior person. If you can't really truly grasp the subject and get all the minutia down and grapple with the problems and the future things that you can preempt and fix before they even happen, you're not there yet. And trying to teach that to young people is hard. I was working with a guy today who's 25 years old, really bright, fast, sharp. He kind of gets a lot of things pretty easily, but he completely missed like the big picture of what he was doing. And I thought to myself, he has like a year and a half to go until he's at like that high level where we can start teaching him like the technical theory behind everything, make him like a truly expert level employee at this subject. But he'll get promoted before then probably anyway. So um, you get this problem here where every time you train somebody, if they don't make it to that like high level expert or close to expert level role, and then they move on, and then you're not there to train the next person or whatever it might be, then you get this generations where you're the generation 1 or 0. You're the expert. You train this person 75%. They train the next person 90%. And that person trains the next person 75%. Well, now that person, 3 down the chain, if they never got to that expert level again, is going to be 60% as good as you were. So it's a degradation across time that people have to watch out for. and they have to think about how they develop employees below them or people around them to be experts in the subject matter, because everyone wants to work with someone competent. And if you can help someone near you learn all those technical skills, give them the feedback that helps them develop to that level, it's going to be easier on you. It's going to be easier for your company. It's going to be easier and better for that person. And you're going to get credit for helping them too.